Hey everyone, this is Ollie Wu again. In this tutorial video, I will show you how to clone a complete EQ plugin or not just one single preset. So in my last clone EQ tutorial or cloning EQ curves, I did just a static preset. So this time it's going to be dynamic. I haven't really found a plugin that does everything I want. In order to do that easily, there are some that are coming close, and I might show them another time. But today I want to show you a new vibe-coded plugin I did last weekend. And for that, I'm using the amazing new Artists in DSP Amorph Effects plugin. And you can get to that by going to their Gumroad page and downloading it from there. It's currently still in beta. And this will install three plugins: an instruments plugin, an FX plugin, and a MIDI plugin. And for this example, you only need the effects plugin, the FX plugin. Then you also need to go to my site on archive.org, CloneEQ, go to the files section and download the CloneEQ.amorph file. So once you have that, you can go back into your DAW and you open the Amorph plugin and you click on this icon right here, which will open up the folder where everything is installed. And we have here first an FX folder, and then underneath another user folder. And on Windows, this is inside updater roaming, and on Mac, it's probably somewhere in application support. But you can just open it from the plugin like I showed you. So the downloaded file, which is my preset if you want, or program or project for the plugin, CloneEQ Amorph. And as soon as you have put that in there, you can actually select it here inside the plugin. You don't even need to restart the plugin. Yeah, sorry, my machine is a bit busy, but in a minute or so, usually it's much faster on a fast machine. It opens the UI. So again, go through the Artists and DSP tutorial videos if you're curious about how this programming works. But I will just show you this in a black box. So we are in the in my plugin now, if you want. And it's a mode or a project or a preset of that Amorph plugin. Now, this also has snapshots. So preset inside a preset, you can have snapshots, and I provided for you basically pre-made clones of 10 of the most famous EQs in history. So this is an extra bonus for you. Let's do a quick overview over this UI. This is basically meant for learning. So I don't have a compact UI as of yet. Takes a bit of space, but yeah, in the top you see there's the master volume output. You see a low shelf, you see a peak, another peak, and a high shelf. So low and high shelf are always in shelf mode, and the low mid and high mid peak is always in peak mode. And then on the horizontal row here, you have the frequency, the gain, and the Q, which is related to bandwidth. And in each of these, you see the current value inside the knob here. You see the min and the max value, and that's kind of a new feature that I came up with by researching this. And I can set the min and the max value based on the currently selected value. And I can also reset the whole value range. So I will next go into an example of how you then can use this EQ to clone another EQ. Okay, so now I have everything set up like in my first EQ curve cloning plugin, and I will go through the same process again. We're starting with the lowest setting of the low shelf here, which is lowest setting, 33. And I'm matching the gain first, and then I just set this to the lowest setting. You can use the shift key to make it a bit easier. And you can also use the Q to get the curve a bit more in the same range. And then I set min. So this is now locked left side to min. Then I go to max, go all the way over here, pretty good, and I set it to max. So both are locked. If you need to do it over again, you can click on reset range. But this is pretty much now, I mean, it doesn't have the intermediate steps, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. But this is pretty much now the curve. And in this case, the volume range is pretty much the same as well. So, right? So this is pretty cool. And then we're done. We just double click. And then we go to the next one, which is here a peak. And I'm setting this, again, the range is fairly coarse here. Sometimes it helps to click the shift button. And you set the Q, which is the low Q. So in this case, you might as well then also set capture min for Q. You click on the high Q. You need to adjust the volume here, the gain, right? And then you set the high Q like this. So again. I forgot to set the low Q. Oh, I did it wrong. Again. Low Q, min. So you can start over again in case you did something wrong. And that's a bit annoying, but at least I made sure that the Q here behaves in a proportional manner. So you can see that the Q here is much wider than here. So that's what mostly Qs do, right? Maybe not the very old ones, but I'm basically implemented a proportional Q here. And then we go to the max value, and I will ignore the fact that the Q is also changing a bit, maybe gets a bit steeper from the low to the high frequency. Make sure we have captured the low frequencies. There's a lot to capture here, frequencies and Q. You notice again the volume is a bit different, and we're ignoring the difference here, but I'm setting this to my max frequency. So let's again make sure this is the main frequency. It's a bit wrong. And this is the max frequency. And I gave it really generous ranges. I just hope the steps would be a bit finer on the low side. So this is working now. And then again, if we set the Q to low and you go to the low Q, that's almost like flipping the switch. We're at least pretty close, right? We originally set this for this setting. Yeah, so this is how it works for all the other bands. So you can do those on your own. And we'll get back to it in a minute. And I show you some comparisons with different EQs. Okay, so now let's look at a completed result. I've already cloned most of the famous EQs for use in history. So we have here this very Neve EQ. You might have to play around a bit with the knobs, but yeah, it should all match up. It's not the plugins problem, but I had a bit of a problem because I needed to change these ranges all the time to do different EQs. So, so that caused some issues. So I had to redo some of these. And then let's just pick some random examples. Here's the API 550B. I have this peak, which is this one. And yeah, I didn't set the high and low range. I didn't want to restrict you in terms of the range here, but I preset the Q again. And so if I go all the way down here, you can see it pretty much matches. So that's pretty cool. Then there is the famous Helios Type 69 EQ. We're coming up on the wrong screen here. So let's say 69. So I didn't use the lowest band because it's not really using a low shelf. And in this case, you'll notice that the low Q is different from the high Q. I mean, it's not something that maybe it's desired to be mimicked, but in this case, I added the high Q to mimic this behavior where the frequency, with the frequency range, the Q changes. So that's something you can do as well. We got the famous Pultec. This one, of course, is a bit tricky because it has this famous combination of multiple low bands, where one of them is a shelf going up and one of them is a shelf going down. But I don't have two shelves, but I try to mimic it nonetheless. So if I'm taking my two low parts, one of them goes up and one of them goes down. And again, you might have to restrict yourself to maybe 16 dB max. So if you want, you can set min and max also for volume. But you see it's pretty much at 100 working. And then I also try to make it work roughly at the lowest one. So maybe you need to correct it a bit, set different frequency values, but it's pretty much working. And then I never liked the fact that the uppermost here on the uppermost band on the Pultec only could go down. And of course, we can go up as well, right? There you go. Yeah, what other EQs do I have? I have a Harrison EQ. I have a SSL 4KE EQ that I did both in the black and the brown knob version. And finally, I also did the famous Abbey Road's EMI TG12345 EQ, which is also sometimes called the Chandler Curve Bender, which can also be used as a mastering EQ. And then last but not least, I did a famous Siemens EQ, the Sitral, sometimes called W295B. So I did that as well. There's a similar in name, a Neumann 495, but the curves are a bit different. But I think the Neumann is maybe more used for mastering. So I think the Siemens is actually pretty cool. So yeah, these are all included here for free as snapshots. And you can, of course, take snapshots using my process from anything you like. And those snapshots are included in the AMORPH preset file, or again, they call it here also project file. Underneath this is a lot more. If you're curious, click on lab. Then you can actually see the actual DSP code that creates the audio. And this is in a language called C major, made by the same guys that did the Juice language. And then there's a UI that is written in JavaScript, a Node. And yeah, you can use a Claude AI to write some of this code, do some vibe coding. So it's very, very interesting. I hope you enjoy this. And take care until the next time. This is Ollie Wu.